Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, at the edge of a great big forest, there lived a woodcutter. He lived with his 2 children, Hansel and Gretel, and with his wife, the children's stepmother. The family was very poor, and there was hardly ever enough food to go around. One day, things got so bad that there was nothing left to eat in their house except for one last loaf of bread. That night, as the woodcutter and his wife lay in bed, she said to him, "Husband, there is something you must do if you don't want us all to starve. Early in the morning, we must take the children, give them the last little bit of bread, and lead them into the forest. We will slip away from them and leave them there alone." At first, the woodcutter would not agree to such a wicked plan, but the wife nagged, and in a moment of weakness, he promised her he would do as she asked. The children were not sleeping, and they overheard everything. Gretel began to cry. "Don't worry," Hansel comforted her. "Everything will be all right. I have an idea." Gretel watched as Hansel got up as quietly as he could, put on his jacket, and went outside. He filled his pockets with little white pebbles that glistened in the moonlight. Then he went back inside, laid back down in bed, and fell asleep. The next morning, the woodcutter and his wife gave each of the children a piece of bread, and told them that they were all going for a walk in the forest. As they walked along, Hansel lagged behind, and from time to time took a pebble from his pocket and let it drop to the ground. They went on walking a long time, until they were deep in the middle of the great forest. Their father lit a great big fire, and when it was burning strongly, their stepmother said, "Children, your father and I are going to cut some more wood. You just wait here by the fire until we return." The children sat by the fire and ate their bread. After a time, it grew dark, but their parents did not return. Gretel began to cry, but Hansel said to her, "Don't worry, I will get us home." And although the forest was very dark, soon enough, the moon rose and shone through the trees. The little pebbles Hansel had dropped the day before glistened in the moonlight. The children walked through the night, following the path of gleaming pebbles. They made it back home just as the morning sun was rising. Their father was happy to see them, for in truth, he loved them, and had only agreed to the stepmother's evil plan in a moment of weakness. But their stepmother was very angry. That night, she told her husband that they must try again. This time, they would lead the children even deeper into the forest, so deep that they could never find their way home. Upon hearing this, Gretel burst into tears. Hansel tried to comfort her, telling her he would go out and gather pebbles so that they could once again find their way home from the forest. But when he tried the door, he found that the wicked stepmother had locked it. Nevertheless, Hansel calmed Gretel and told her not to worry. "I will think of some other way," he promised her. The next morning, the parents gave them each a little bit of bread. Then they set out into the forest once more. Although he did not have any pebbles this time, Hansel thought of another way to leave a trail. From time to time, he would lag behind and drop a crumb of bread that he would rip from the little bit that he had. When they got to one of the deepest parts of the forest, the parents again left them alone, promising to return shortly, but once again, the parents did not return. When the moon rose, Hansel looked for the breadcrumbs, but he could not find them, for they were gone. The birds of the forest had eaten them all up. Hansel and Gretel wandered the forest for 2 days, but they could not find their way home. They were hungry, they were cold, and they were totally lost. On the 3rd day, they came upon a most remarkable sight. It was a house, built entirely out of cookies, cakes, and other such treats. The window panes were made of all sorts of different colored candles, and the roof was made of pancakes. The children ran up to the house and began to feast. Gretel greedily grabbed a candy window pane to suck on, and Hansel took a great big bite out of one of the pancakes. Everything tasted as good as it looked, and the children were enjoying themselves greatly, when they heard a little voice call out from inside. "Nibble, nibble like a little mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?" A moment later, a little old lady, white and bent over, hobbled out the door. "Oh," she said, when she saw the children, "you sweet little things, come inside with me. I have plenty to eat. I will take good care of you." She led them inside, and she fed them a delicious meal. And when they got tired, she put them both into a warm, soft bed to sleep in. But in truth, the old woman was an evil witch, and in the middle of the night, while Hansel slept, she took him out of the bed and put him in a cage. In the morning, she shook Gretel awake and yelled, "Get up, you lazy girl! You have work to do. You must wash and clean and cook. Your brother is in the cage over there. First, we are going to fatten him up with some of the nice food you will cook, and when he is nice and plump, I will eat him for dinner." Gretel was broken-hearted to see her brother in the cage, but she had no choice but to obey the wicked witch. Each day, she would help the witch to prepare the best foods to serve Hansel and make him grow fat. And each day she would watch as the witch would approach the cage and cry out, "Hansel, stretch out your finger so I can feel if you have grown fat enough." Hansel, who knew very well what it would mean if the old woman found his finger to be plump enough, would hold out a little bone instead of his finger, and the witch, who could not see very well, would be fooled. But after a few weeks had passed and she did not find Hansel to be getting any fatter, the witch lost patience. She told Gretel, "That's it. Tomorrow morning I shall bake some bread, and in the evening, no matter how fat he is or he is not, we will cook Hansel in a pot, and I shall eat him for dinner." When Gretel awoke in the morning, the witch was already in the kitchen, standing near the giant oven. "Gretel," the witch called out, "I need you to check if the bread is ready. Crawl into the oven and tell me if it is fully baked." Now Gretel was quite a clever girl, and she knew that the witch meant to trick her. She would send her into the oven, and then she would slam the door on her and leave her inside to bake. So, instead of crawling into the oven as the witch had commanded, Gretel asked, "I don't know how to do it. How shall I get in?" "Why, it's simple," said the witch. "Even I can fit in." And she crawled into the doorway of the oven to show Gretel just how it could be done. That was exactly what Gretel had been waiting for. She gave the witch a huge shove and slammed the oven door with the evil woman inside. The witch howled and screamed, but Gretel ran from the kitchen and left the witch to burn. She ran outside to Hansel's cage and unlocked it. Hansel was free, and the brother and sister hugged each other with great joy. One last time they ran back into the witch's house, which was full of precious jewels and gold and silver. They filled their pockets and their hands with as much as they could carry, and they set off for home. This time, they were able to find their way, and soon they spied their home in the distance. When their father saw them, he wept with joy. He told them that their evil stepmother had died, and that he would never let anyone separate him from his children again. Hansel and Gretel showed their father all of the precious gold and jewels that they had brought back with them, and they all knew that they would never have to go hungry again. And so the woodcutter and his children lived happily ever after. The end.